Tips of the Scale, episode 31.
Welcome to tipsofthescale.com, your home for weight loss motivation. Tune in every week for weight loss success stories from around the world and for expert tips on diet and exercise. And now, your host, Sam Lamelli.
Hey there, Scale Warriors, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Tips of the Scale, your home for weight loss motivation. Do you love great audio content? I know you do because you listen to this show. If you want to support Tips of the Scale, please go to scale.fm/audiobook and sign up for a free trial of audible.com. You'll get a free audiobook from their over 150,000 title library, and you can listen anytime, anywhere on your iPhone, Android, Kindle, and many other devices. So again, support this podcast and go to scale.fm/audiobook. Okay, Scale Warriors, let's get started. I am thrilled to introduce my guest today, Mr. Colin Gale from Buffalo, New York. Now, Colin has an awesome story to share with us today, and I'm really excited to share it. But before we do that, Colin, how are you?
I'm doing really well today, Sam.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Before we dive into your story, would you go ahead and take a minute, Colin, to help us get to know you a little bit better? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm Colin Gale, and I was born in New York City, but I have lived in Buffalo, New York for most of my life. I enjoy working out, reading, a lot of walking outdoors. That's been really my sort of clarity. Every Sunday I do that before the week begins. And I used to play tennis when I was younger, and I really want to get back into that in the spring and summer as we when Buffalo sort of goes through its winter. So next spring and summer, I want to get back into playing tennis.
Right on. I love tennis myself. It's a fantastic way to get your heart rate up and have some fun. Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, Colin. And as you know, the next thing that we like to do is to kick off the show with a motivational quote that gets our listeners excited and ready to hear the story that you're going to share with us today. So what do you have for us today?
My motivational quote is, and I don't know if it's one that I came up with or if I heard it somewhere, but it's one that I use in sort of all mantras of life. It's keep it moving. And what I mean by that is, whenever life is getting you down or you're struggling, the best thing that you can do is just keep it moving. And I always allow myself, whenever I have a disappointment or something has happened to me, I allow myself, about 30 minutes to an hour to sort of wallow. I call it my little wallow time. And then once that's over, it now goes into the past and I move forward. So keep it moving.
Keep it moving. Some good advice. I totally can understand what it's like to take that kind of healthy moment to absorb whatever just happened or whatever, to really deal with an emotion or your response to something. I think that's completely healthy. I agree with that 100%. That's awesome. Keep it moving. I like it. All right. So, Colin, with that said, let's dive into your story. And as you know, we like to go back to where it all started. So for you, Colin, when did the weight gain begin and what do you think contributed to it?
Well, the weight gain actually began the summer before I started fifth grade. I broke my leg. I'm a very clumsy person. I was a very clumsy child, and that has continued into adulthood. But I randomly slipped one day in my driveway, and it wasn't like I was running. I think I just sort of stumbled over my feet, and somehow I broke my the growth plate in my right leg. So I was out of commission for 6 weeks, and I remember just sort of sitting around. My grandmother came and sort of took care of me, and what I can remember from that time is just sort of sitting there while she was watching soap operas and she was eating, and so she was giving me food too. And so that's basically what I did for about 6 weeks. And by the time I started fifth grade, I had gained a little weight. I don't know how much at the time, but I just remember that it was me starting a new school. Fifth grade was a new school for me, and it was quite an adjustment period for myself. And I would come home after school, and I would go to the corner store and get a whole bunch of junk food and sort of stuff myself. But I'd still eat dinner later. So that's sort of what started it. I probably gained about 25 pounds during fifth grade just because of doing all that. So that's sort of how the struggle began. And it just sort of continued on and off throughout childhood and into adulthood. And I was never really fat, or what I would call obese, until I went into grad school in 2009, and I gained 50 pounds between September 2009 and May of 2011, which is when I finished grad school. So I gained 50 pounds in that time, and it was crazy. It was crazy. So so that's sort of where it began, and that's sort of how it sort of continued, and it all sort of came back to sort of emotional eating. That was what it was: stress eating, emotional eating.
Yeah, that's very common. I heard you say that part of it in the 5th grade was also adjusting to a new school. I mean, that's a pretty tender age, and getting to know new people and kind of uprooting. It can be a jarring experience. I've heard from, I went to 3 different elementary schools myself, and I've heard stories from people who did a lot of traveling for military families and things like that. So I completely understand and relate to where you're coming from with brand new environment in the 5th grade and putting on 25 pounds that year.
Yeah. It taught me sort of early on, and I don't know if this was something that my family had taught me or I talked about, because I think there was always stress eating going on in my household, or reward eating. So it was either one, and that's just sort of how it began with me. And the other thing that contributed a lot to that was the fact that I was gay, and I was not able to sort of deal with my sexuality, and going forward into teenage and adulthood, it took me quite a bit. So me being heavier or me gaining weight was me sort of hiding behind all that as well. So I finally came out on January 1st, 2006. And so to start the new year right, of course. Absolutely. And so at that point, I had already sort of lost some weight as an adult, and I was feeling pretty good and pretty confident in myself. And it's just that once I sort of was faced with more adversity and more challenges, which was going to grad school full time while working full time, I broke back into old habits. Yeah,
that's a lot to carry on your shoulders and consciousness at the same time. I mean, you were kind of repressing something from the world for a little while, and I completely understand the stress of that. And then, this later phase of your life, you have also the monumental stresses of grad school and then entering the professional world and all of that at the same time. That's some pretty major life changes I've heard you describe in just the last 2 minutes here. And I completely get where each of these plays into falling back into the habit of finding comfort in food. Completely understand it.
Right.
Yeah. So thinking about these periods of your life and things that were going on and how your health directly impacted those things, what were some of the challenges that you experienced? What were the ways that your being overweight impacted your quality of life?
Well, I've struggled with social anxiety for a while, and I think a lot of that had to do with sort of my size, or a perception of my size. It's sort of surprising because a lot of my friends were like, we didn't even realize how heavy you were. So I think that I just sort of was projecting a lot of stuff on myself. But I had a lot of social anxiety. I felt really uncomfortable sometimes in social settings because of the fact that I was heavier or I didn't like the way I looked. But it didn't stop me from participating in social settings. I'm a very social person, and I always have been. But it was really always a struggle for me to do these things. And physically, as a kid, I struggled with gym class and sports and things like that. And as an adult, one of the things that I remember quite a bit, especially when I had gained that weight during grad school, was that I was hot all the time. So I was always like sweaty, and I couldn't understand what was wrong. I was like, why am I always hot when it's cold outside? And it was definitely because of me carrying this extra weight, and I understand that I was snoring more. I went on a couple of trips with some friends, and they were like, God, you snore. And I said, I never snored before. And then it was all related to sort of to my weight. And then my family diabetes runs, and I am sure that I had some sort of like pre-diabetic things going on. I refused to go to the doctor at that time, which of course makes no sense. But I was like, I don't want to hear it. So, but I was dealing with a lot of stuff where I was like, something's not right with my health and things like that. So, all that stuff was the result of me, being so heavy.
Yeah, I think I don't want to hear it, or kind of denying that, or just avoiding the doctor altogether is a pretty common thing. You are by no means alone in trying to avoid hearing what you knew probably in the back of your head that you were going to hear.
Yeah.
Well, so I think there's a lot in your story right there that a lot of people can relate to. I think it's interesting to note also that your friends didn't notice or didn't see you the same way that you saw yourself. So there's an aspect to your story of your own body image being really skewed from what the people around you were seeing. That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't realize that until now, and that's helped me sort of really get in touch with sort of who I am and where I am right now, because I would never talk to my friends about this, and now it's been forced to come up with me losing weight. So
yeah. So before you found the thing that ultimately worked for you and helped you find a much healthier place in your life, what were some things that you tried that didn't really work for you? Were there some diets or programs that you gave a shot that didn't really work out for you at the time?
well, it's I was thinking a lot about this, and I didn't really go on a lot of diets per se. I think I would say, oh, I'm going to change my eating habits. I think I'm going to do this. And it was always, I think there's been every sort of New Year's where I would say, oh, I'm going to, do this, and I didn't do it. Or I would say, oh, I'll start on Monday, or I'll start on Sunday, and things like that. I think that, but when I sort of thought about any sort of diet I had tried at one point, I think when I was a teenager, and I think that this worked because I actually did lose some weight before my senior year of high school. And I was working out, but I was also doing Slim Fast, so I was doing like the shake for lunch, shake for breakfast, and then like the sensible dinner as it was at the time. But I mean, that was such a quick fix because the minute you start reintroducing regular food into your diet, you start to gain weight. And the other thing that I tried, which is a good program, but it just didn't work for me, was Weight Watchers online. I tried that when I was in grad school. Once I realized I was gaining weight, and I just couldn't sort of keep up with it. And then post grad school, I tried it as well. It was just the whole concept of the assigning of points to the food. Just I couldn't sort of get with that concept. And then I was always working out as part of, it was never just sort of diet. It would be diet and exercise. Okay. So I was always having a hard time because I couldn't understand the whole concept of activity points. And it was just, kept getting confused. And I sort of got to the point where I said, this is just too annoying for me to try to figure out. And especially because Weight Watchers changed point values every now and then. So it was just too much for me, and I just said, okay, I'm done with it. So I sort of dropped it.
Yeah, I've heard some very differing experiences with it, and I think it comes down to, like you said, if you're that personality who loves the numbers and loves tracking that kind of stuff is one thing, but if it gets a little too granular to sustain over the long term or to stick with, then it can be difficult. I would have a tough time with that as well. I completely understand where you're coming from. So, you gave that a shot. I heard a couple of different things that you tried there that didn't really work out for you for various reasons, but eventually there was a moment where things changed. So, Colin, what was that for you? What was the event, the realization, the spark, the thing that finally made you change course and find the thing that was successful for you?
Well, it's interesting because I had the moment twice. When I finished grad school in May 2011, I was promptly told by my boss at work that they were going to be outsourcing my unit. So the unit that I was in charge of, and it was 12 people who worked for me, we were all going to be out of work. So it was just like I think we had an end date that was maybe eight weeks out, and I was just sort of stressed out, and I felt worse for my team than for myself because I said, well, I just got my master's degree, I should be good, I'm not that concerned, but I was concerned for my team, so I was stressed, and I realized the only thing I could have control over at that moment was my weight. So I started working out and eating right, and so I lost like 20 pounds in 5 weeks, which was really a lot. Wow. And it was really quickly, but right on the heels of that, I got sick. I developed a really bad cold, which turned into a flu, and I was bedridden for like a week. And so when I finished, and I recovered, I had no interest in working out anymore. At this point, I was out of work, and I was sort of dealing with sort of that depression. So I slowly just started eating again, and the weight just slowly started creeping back on, and so I ended up gaining that weight back and just a few pounds extra. So I got to August of 2012, and I had spent like sort of a whole year sort of gaining this weight and being sort of unhappy with myself, and I'd seen some pictures of myself, and I just couldn't believe that it was me, and I was like, I am so fat. I just could not believe it, and I had to make a change. And I said to myself, I was about 4 weeks away from turning 35 at that moment. And I said, okay, I need to do something for myself, and I have to lose this weight. So I just basically made the decision that I was going to start working out again, which I always liked doing, and I was going to eat right. And I said it has to be pretty simple. It's probably eating right and just working out and doing it consistently. And I did, and that's sort of how it started. And then I also the other thing I did was I gave up alcohol for 4 weeks because I'm not a big drinker, but I used to go out a lot, so I was a social drinker. So 2 to 3 drinks a night, and if you're going out 3 to 4 days a week, and then you may go out eating afterwards, it was just a bad combination. So sort of giving all that up really did help.
Yeah. An interesting thing too that I've touched on in a previous interview, but I like to reiterate because it's something that struck me when I first learned it, is that your body has a preference for certain types of fuel, and alcohol is at the very top. So that if you're anything you're eating, and usually when you're drinking along with your food, it's not the healthiest food that you're eating, but anything you're eating is guaranteed to be stored, and it's usually the greasy, the fatty, the bar food, right? That kind of fare. And because your body prefers to burn the alcohol first rather than the calories in the food you consumed. So I can see that was probably a huge part or a huge element of your success, just dropping that alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I lost, I think, when I did it for those 4 weeks between working out and not drinking, I think I lost like 16 pounds, which, which was pretty big.
Yeah, that's a great start. That is a fantastic way to get started. So right off the bat, you're seeing some change on the scale. You're seeing some improvement. You're seeing the numbers going in the right direction. Did you run into any obstacles early along the way? And if so, what were they?
Well, a few obstacles, and to be sort of fair to myself, I actually stayed pretty committed. I started this, and at work, some friends decided that they wanted to do a Biggest Loser competition. So I said, oh, okay, great. And I knew I was competitive, but I didn't realize how competitive I was until I jumped into this competition. And I basically obliterated the competition. And, I'm sure that some of my friends will be listening to this, and I don't want to make them feel bad, but I did. I beat them by quite a bit. And because I was just like, well, I totally can win this because I'm working out hard and I'm eating right and everything. But what was sort of challenging was I had friends who supported me, but yet there was these things where these little sort of sabotage moments where, I had given up drinking, for example, and for the 4 weeks. And so that's not a long period of time. And I remember that it was at the end of the first week, I had some friends who wanted to go out, and I, said, okay, I'll go out. We'll go to a bar, and I'll just get like a Diet Coke. And then I figured, I'll do that, and then I'll go home. Well, I was getting pressured into continuing the evening, and and they said, oh, we haven't seen you in so long, and things like that. And it was just, so I went along with going out, but I would not, drink anything. And then I had them, and then they bought me shots.
Oh, boy.
And I said no. I absolutely refused, and I said you can have both of these shots, but and of course they were all sort of drunk at this moment. So by the next time that I spoke to them when they were sober, I said to them, I said, don't do that again. I said this is very important to me, and I can't have my friends trying to sabotage something that I'm really working hard on.
Yeah.
And so it was. So I mean, I think if anything, if there was any sort of obstacles, it sort of came from sort of the people in my life who I think thought that they were helping, but they were not. They were. I don't know what was sort of going on with that, but those were probably more the obstacles. I think personally I was pretty much on point with everything, and I was staying focused. But having sort of friends and family sometimes not being the most supportive, and not on purpose, it's just sort of how things were happening, that was definitely a struggle and an obstacle.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's interesting. I've read a number of articles and heard a number of experiences very similar to yours, where it's the people closest to you sometimes who present the biggest challenges. And just like you said, it probably was not mean-spirited or, with the intention of sabotaging your efforts, but it's a weird thing when, for some people, when they see someone close to them making changes that kind of prick at their own conscience, and overeating and drinking are by far, to me, in my observation, the ones that people are most sensitive about is when someone in their circle who they've done that with in a social setting starts to stop doing that thing. It really pricks the conscience of the people around them. And so they can, even without trying in some cases, start doing like it sounds like your friends did, where there was the pressure and all that. And kudos to you for sticking to your guns and being disciplined and standing up for yourself and saying, this is not who I am anymore. And, please don't do that again, and holding your ground and sticking to what you were doing. Because that is a huge, huge thing. And it's so hard in the face of pressure from people you love. So kudos to you for doing that and sticking with it.
Thank you. A lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm very stubborn. So I was definitely going to stick to it. I just like, there's no way. If anyone's going to take me off the path, it'll be myself. I'm not going to let someone else take me off that path. So.
That is a fantastic mindset. I've been called stubborn myself, and it does have its advantages in situations like that. So again, kudos to you for sticking to it.
Thank you.
So on the subject of encouragement, what were some of the reactions you got when you started to notice, or when others started to notice your progress, and how did that feel?
Well, because we were doing The Biggest Loser at work, I got immediate reactions almost every week when I was losing weight, and it felt fantastic. And one of the things I thought this was great because I could make myself be held accountable weekly with a group of people that I see nearly every day. But I said I need to take it another step, and it's really important that I do this. So I thought about it, and I really, really sort of agonized over this decision. But I decided to post my progress on Facebook, and which was hard because I kept thinking, okay, I have, my Facebook friends, I have people who are, personal friends, I have people who are professional friends and acquaintances, so I'm really letting it out there for everyone to see. But I felt that I had to do this because this was a life change for me. This wasn't a diet. This was me changing my life, and I was really excited about it. And I needed to be held accountable for this too, because I knew, and I know myself because I am stubborn, is that if I went through all this trouble and I was losing weight and I did it in a public setting, in a public forum, there'd be no way that I was going to turn around and gain this weight back, because I would just be, I would be humiliated if I did that. So I know that this would be the best way to do this. So I would post my progress. Every time I had a weight loss, I post my progress, and I would get lots of feedback and comments, and eventually I sort of got to the point where I started posting pictures so people could see the difference, and people were really surprised because they never sort of saw me. A lot of people hadn't seen me sort of heavier, especially those people who I was pretty close to, who saw me on a regular basis. They didn't say, oh my God, you were heavy before. They just basically were like, we can't believe, the change. So it basically was a lot of positive feedback, a lot of sort of kudos, and also there were some who struggled with it as well, because it did bring some people definitely had to do a lot of reflection, and they struggled with it. They weren't mean to me, they weren't rude to me, but they definitely struggled with it. I had people sort of step back from my life, and I was like, why are they getting so distant? And then, so I did a little more probing, and I found out why. So it was definitely overwhelmingly positive, but when those sort of negative things happen, especially with people who you love, it definitely sort of makes an impression on you.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that happens sometimes in these cases, and everyone, I think, is responsible for their own safety and their own well-being, and that's you being cautious of who you surround yourself with, and maybe some of these individuals weren't ready to get to know the new Colin, or to see the changes in you, and I think in my opinion that's more about them, right, than about you. So there's some of the things that they had to deal with in that adjustment. But
yeah, and that's what I said too. I had some people who suddenly sort of felt that they were in a little bit of a competition with me in terms of weight loss, because I had known some people for a while, but I wasn't heavy by any means. When I met people, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, but I but it wasn't sort of where I am now, and where I was going. And I think that people just sort of were like, I've never known you sort of, number one, to be this committed to fitness and health, but also sort of seeing you in this sort of size. And I think that just, people sort of felt like they were in competition with me, and they're like, oh, you can't get thinner than me. And I'm like, I'm not doing this because of you. This is about me. so there were some hard conversations that I had with people, but everyone basically is on board with everything now. I mean, the hardest thing I think now is just my family, in terms of, I have people who think that, I'm losing too much weight, or I've lost too much weight. And so having those conversations, but I have been consulting with my doctor, and I'm fine. So
good. It's really important to note that, I heard you say a couple of things that really stuck out to me, and one of them was that it wasn't a diet, that it was you were changing your life, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of aspects of your life are going to change in the peripheral, and it sounds like that was some of the people in your life, and yeah, that's a tough thing, and you kept focused throughout and kept your eyes on what was right for you. And so on that note, what were the ways that you kept yourself, motivated and kept yourself focused, when these changes that weren't always great to experience, were happening in your life? How did you keep yourself in the zone and keep yourself moving forward?
Well, I did a lot of sort of self-reflection. I was trying to do some journaling. I would spend some time sort of taking a lot of walks and just thinking. It sort of helped me out a lot. And one of the things that I started a few months ago, this is the first time that people will hear this, and is the fact that I started therapy a couple months ago, because I needed to talk to someone who was totally impartial and could sort of help me through this. I mean, losing weight, especially losing a great amount of weight, is really, really sort of it's life-changing, and people look at you differently. People treat you differently, and I wasn't really prepared for that, because I had never experienced a weight loss of this magnitude before. I had lost weight before right now. The most I had ever lost was 40 pounds, and because that was all I had to lose, but I had never gotten this big before. So but to watch myself and to see sort of the transformation of myself, where I started to where I am now, I look almost like half the person. I didn't lose half my body weight, but I almost look like half the person. It has been quite an experience for me. And for me as a gay man, there's a whole nother sort of aspect that goes with it. Our community can be very supportive, but we can be really, really, really hard on each other as well. And so losing this weight, and then having people who never looked at me before suddenly look at me or try to talk to me, all that stuff was really sort of hard to take. And as someone who's pretty straightforward, it was difficult for me to sort of understand how to sort of deal with these interactions. And so I needed a little help, and it has been it's been helpful, speaking with someone who is a professional and can sort of, talk to me about these types of things. It's been wonderful, and it's also been sort of life-changing.
Good. I think that's a underutilized resource for a lot of people, and another kudos to you for knowing yourself well enough to understand that you needed that impartial person to go and to vent to, and kind of be as open and authentic about what was going on with you as you possibly could. That's great. I appreciate your sharing that.
Sure.
Very cool. So it sounds like you were learning a ton about yourself, and that this journey has involved a lot of reflection, a lot of introspection. And so in terms of what you've discovered about yourself along the way, Colin, what are some things you didn't know about yourself, or that you didn't expect to learn when you started this journey?
I learned that I actually like clothes, which is, and I'm very picky about them, because I've had to buy completely new wardrobes, and I'm currently right now struggling because I don't have much for fall and winter, so I've been slowly trying to get them. But I realize I'm very, very picky and somewhat indecisive when it comes to picking clothes. So that's one of the things I've learned. I learned how to be able to take compliments from people.
Interesting.
That was something that was really, really difficult for me. Anytime someone would compliment me before, I would make some remark, some self-deprecating remark, or I would just say, "Oh, thanks," but I try to sort of shine the light back on them or on someone else. And I had a friend of mine, Broderick, and I'm definitely going to call him out because what he said was sort of life-changing to me. He said, he said, "I used to do that all the time, and my grandmother said to me, that's really rude. When someone pays you a compliment, you just say thank you." And so it stuck with me. And so I said, you know what, I need to start doing that. So when I was getting people say, "You look great" and everything, I would say, "Thank you." And that would be, and so I was like, and that would sort of help me to sort of learn to sort of take compliments. And then also when people were saying that I was an inspiration to them, I mean, my parents both jumped right back into health and fitness. I mean, my dad's been a runner for years, but he had gained a little weight, so he lost some weight. My mom had decided that she wanted to start, running 5Ks again and things like this. And this happened a little bit before I started losing weight, but once I started doing it, she really got focused and was doing that, and she's been losing weight. And I mean, and my parents are both in their early 60s. I mean, it's amazing, So for me to be an inspiration, people say to me, "You're an inspiration." I've learned to sort of take that and say, thank you for saying that, and anything that I can do for you, I will, be here for you. So that has helped me as well, because I never was good with that. I've always been a natural leader, but I was a leader in, professional ways, but I never could sort of deal with it, personally. And now I'm sort of at that point where I definitely can.
Yeah. I completely understand that. I think in my observation, the difficulty with accepting compliments and kind of the response of using self-deprecation is kind of a shield, right? Where you don't want to absorb for some reason the compliment or the great thing that's being said about you. And you've had difficulty with that throughout your life, I'm assuming, and tell me if I'm way off here, but just letting things through that shield for a change helps you absorb them and actually believe in yourself more than you did before.
Yeah, absolutely. It has.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm glad to hear that. It sounds like the people around you were, giving you the props that you deserved for the changes you were making, and you're absorbing them now, which is good. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Switching to the outside, right? We talked about kind of the introspection and what was going on with you internally. What were some things that you learned throughout this journey about diet and exercise that you didn't know when you started?
Well, I mean, it was something that I sort of knew, but I didn't really see it in practice, which was basically, in order to lose some weight, you need to burn more than what you're taking in, and it's also the type of food that you're taking in as well. I mean, I use MyFitnessPal, and which is a calorie counter, but it also tells you, sort of the expected levels you need to take in terms of your proteins and everything like that, and in order for you to have like a balanced diet. And I actually started paying attention to that. So I said, okay, I'm learning how to eat again, and I'm learning how to eat healthy. And in terms of working out, it has been wonderful as well, because I've been sort of doing this mixing and matching of exercises, and that has sort of helped me to find a balance. I mean, right now I belong to LA Fitness here in Buffalo, and I joined LA Fitness about 6 months into my journey. I had already lost 42 pounds prior to joining LA Fitness, but I was getting bored with working out, and I had been doing like Taibos and like the Power 90s and things like that, and that was wonderful, but I got bored with it. I was like, I'm working out at home, and I'm tired of working out at home. I want to work out in public now. So I went to the gym. So I started joining a gym and started doing this mix of cardio and weights, and I also would still occasionally do a Taibo workout here and there, and it's just that my body has changed significantly with doing all this, and it is something that I hadn't even thought of before. I hadn't thought of how to make this work. I had belonged to a gym before for years, and I had lost weight, but I still wasn't sort of getting the tone that I wanted, and now I'm sort of I'm getting it. I'm getting it in a way that I never had before.
Right on. It's got to be amazing to see the changes in your body that you probably didn't even think were possible. It sounds like these were beyond what you expected, and it's a great surprise.
It really has been. I mean, I'm still working, and I'm still not at my goal yet. But it's been, really wonderful to see these things, and then to have people, even people at the gym, were like, "Wow, you've really lost some weight," and I say thank you. So.
Very cool. So let's dive into that a little deeper. Help Tips of the Scale listeners get a look into what a typical week looks like for you in terms of both diet and exercise. So like, how frequently do you work out? What kind of workouts? And then, what's the frequency of your meals and the typical breakfast, lunch, dinner, that kind of thing.
Okay. I work out. I work out 6 days a week. I get up Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I get up at 5:15 to go to the gym, and on Saturdays and Sundays I get up at about 7:30 to go to the gym because the gym opens at 8:00 on the weekends. Basically, 3 days a week I do primarily cardio, which is 45 minutes on the elliptical and 30 to 35 minutes on the stair climber, and then I do maybe about 15 minutes on on the circuit machines, just to just do something else. And then the other 3 days I do mostly weights, so I'm doing 60 minutes of weightlifting and circuit machines, but doing lots of like lifting biceps, triceps, shoulders, and I also do leg workouts as well. And then I'll finish that up with a 30-minute workout on the elliptical or stair climber. Just sort of depends on sort of what I'm feeling that day. Okay. And then it's something I've started in the fall because I want to sort of push myself to get to my goal. I used to do this before, but I haven't done it in a while, which is sort of doing what I call the doubles. So I'll work out at the gym in the morning, and then I'll come home after work and I'll do maybe like a half hour, 45-minute Taibo workout or something. Just Billy Blanks has some specific sort of workouts that target areas, and so I'm like, okay, I want to do some abs because I want to, I'm working on getting a six-pack, which is one of my goals, and so I'll work on a specific ab workout, or if it's been a day where it's just mostly weights and I wasn't able really to do as much fat burning as I wanted to, then I'll do sort of a cardio Taibo. But I mean, I've put that on my weekly plan. I have my gym times on my weekly plan, so I can check them off, and then I added my doubles, and I just committed to do 3 to 4 days a week. I just feel like anything more than that is just way too much. But I wanted to at least sort of have that on there, and that's been helping me quite a bit.
I bet that's some serious dedication. That's some good work. I like that you have a mix of weightlifting in there as well as the cardio, so that you're building muscle and hanging on to that lean mass as you melt some fat. Very cool.
Yeah.
So how about from a diet perspective? What do your typical breakfast, lunch, dinner look like? If you eat, the typical 3 meals a day, do you snack? What is that like in a given week?
Well, like now that we're in the fall here in Buffalo, and it's actually finally getting colder, I'm doing oatmeal. Quaker Oats has this sort of weight control oatmeal, which I think just has more fiber in it. And so I'm having that. I usually mix that up with some fruit. I try to do a protein shake after I work out at the gym. It doesn't always happen. It just sort of depends on sort of how much time that I have. And then for lunches, I'm usually doing vegetable soups or salads. I'm a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for 11 years. So I gained 50 pounds while a vegetarian, which of course had everyone sort of scratching their head. But because I'm a vegetarian, I have to sort of find dietary substitutes for things like protein. So I do like a lot of, tofu or I do like boca burgers or things like that, something that's high in protein and that I can put in my salads. And one of the things that I'm doing, because I try to do what they call strive for 5, where you're striving for 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So I try to get all my vegetables and everything in, fruits and vegetables in as early as possible. So just because I know myself, and if I do it and I knock it out early in the day, whatever happens at the end of the day is fine. So I make salads that actually have fruit in it as well. So it's lots of vegetables and then there's fruit in there as well, and then I'll put in some protein, and so that works. And I do snack. I mean, I not a lot, but I basically can eat anything I want to, but I just eat in smaller portions. It's all about serving size and portion control. So
very cool. Do you have any kind of specific goal for calorie intake, or do you just make sure that it's a reasonable amount per meal, or what are your guidelines around that for yourself?
Well, I mean, right now with MyFitnessPal, according to MyFitnessPal, if I was not working out, in order for me to continue to try to lose 2 pounds a week, I would need to be consuming 1280 a day. And of course, when you work out, you earn more calories. So I try to get in. I try to consume at least 2,000 calories a day, if not, a little bit more. It's hard It's hard because, a lot of the stuff I eat is very healthy and it's low calorie. So I have to really sort of, figure things out. And that's a struggle. I have to say that with the diet is something that I still struggle with, and not, eating poorly. It's just eating enough. But generally I try to get somewhere, around 2,000 calories or a little bit more per day. And that's just because of the amount of activity that I do.
Yeah, very cool. And I like that you pointed out that getting enough calories is a primary focus for you in that too. A lot of people don't realize that too few calories can actually work against you when you're trying to lose weight. It's not all about just, eating less. There's a balance there for a number of reasons. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Cool. So Colin, you've come a long way. You've lost over 70 pounds at this point, and like you said, you've lost what looks like half your body when you're comparing photos. Now, if you could go back in time to the Colin back then and tell yourself something, anything that you needed to know at the beginning of this journey, what would it be?
Well, I would tell myself, this is going to be one of the best things that you'll ever do for yourself. So stay on course, don't give up, and I'd also say you're awesome, because I think I think it's important to sort of have some sort of compliment, some sort of mantra there. So I try to always think of myself, you're awesome. So.
Yes, very cool, very cool. I'm a big believer in that also, in positive self-talk, and that's one of the reasons that I ask for the motivational quote here, because they're so important to have that theme in your day or in your life that you move to that beat of what motivates you.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, if there's someone out there listening to this who is in the same place you were when you started, Colin, who's had kind of the ups and downs, who's been overweight, for most of their life and had difficulties dropping it and keeping it off for the long term, to that person out there who's not working out, who's not eating straight, what's one tip you would recommend to that person to start doing today to live healthier?
The first thing I would say to them is that you have to be ready for it. You may think you're ready, but you may not be there yet. So know that you're ready, and also know that you're going to make some mistakes. So even when I started, I wasn't perfect. You sometimes fall off the wagon, so to speak, and you may not be as committed, or you may not have as much time as you thought you could to do it. But if you're truly ready, you will stay committed, and you will be successful no matter how long it takes you. Your timetable may not be the timetable that is the reality. I wanted to lose all my weight in a year, and I am now, I started at the end of August of 2012, and we're recording this at the beginning of November of 2013. I still have not gotten to my goal yet, but I'm okay with that. Yeah. I'm okay because I'm still on this journey, and I think that if people are, if they're truly ready and they're truly committed and they're not afraid to make mistakes but they're ready to jump back on that horse when they make that mistake, I think they'll be perfect. And if I could do something like this as someone who really, has been struggling with this issue since I was 10 years old, anyone can do this.
Right on. Some very inspiring words there from Mr. Colin Gale. Awesome. So I've heard you mention, Colin, that you are, in your words, still working and you're not at your goal. So tell us a little bit more about that. What are you working on now? Is it, further fat loss or transitioning into maintenance? What are you working on?
It's fat loss, and in terms of weight, I'm probably about 15 pounds away from my goal, 12 to 15 pounds away from my goal. And I would reveal my weight now, but one of the things that I have said is that once I get to my goal, I'm going to do my before and after of my actual weight at the beginning and my weight at the end. So I can't have my thunder stolen yet on that. But yeah, I'm about 12 to 15 pounds away from my goal. So it's I'm concentrating on fat loss. I'm concentrating on a lot of toning, which is why I'm sort of doing these extra workouts where I'm concentrating specifically on a body part in an area. Because I've my waist size has gone down tremendously. I started out at a 42-inch waist, and now I'm a 31-32. I put on 31-inch jeans when I went shopping recently. They were a little bit they're too tight when I sat down, so I said no, I'm not buying these. but I'm going in that direction. So it's so a lot of the body parts are changing and getting smaller and getting more toned, and so that is one of my major goals. But also in 2014. I will be doing my first 5K.
Right on.
With my good friend and my gym buddy Ron. He and I have been sort of taking this journey together, and he asked me to do a 5K this year, and I told him no because I hate running. I really, really do. But he needed some extra sort of support and some extra inspiration. So I said to him, well, why don't we do this in 2014, and we'll run our first 5K, and I've already named us Team 1977 because we were both born in 1977. So so it'll be the two of us on that team, but we're gonna do it, and I'm gonna try and get it trending on Twitter as well. So, but yeah, it's that's what I'm really, really, really excited about that. So I'm trying to sort of concentrate on sort of getting down to my goal prior to starting for the training for that, just because I think it'll be easier to not have to be trying to do two of those things at once, but also because I'm like, I'll be lighter, and running, it'll be easier if I'm lighter when I'm running. So.
Well, good for you, and good for you for being a great friend and doing. You're supporting Ron with this, even though you're someone who self admits that they hate running. That's an awesome thing to do for a friend and for your own health. That's awesome that you're running your first 5K. Very cool.
Thank you.
Very cool. So, Colin, you've touched on a couple of resources that were helpful to you along the way. You mentioned MyFitnessPal and a couple of the programs that you worked out to. Are there any other helpful resources you could recommend to our listeners? Any websites or apps, books, videos, anything like that?
One of the major resources that came to me was something. It happened on Twitter. I had been talking about losing weight, and a gentleman reached out to me, a Beachbody coach from the Beachbody products, which is like the Power 90, P90X, Shanti Insanity, all those things. A gentleman by the name of Michael Smith reached out to me, and he invited me to join a Facebook group, a Facebook fitness group, and that has been a huge source of comfort, inspiration, everything. And that's actually how I knew your past guest, David Jasmine, because we're friends from the fitness group, the online fitness group. And that has been a huge support. So I would tell anyone who is looking for sort of that type of support, either do a search for some for a fitness group, or even contact me, and I can see if I can get you into this group, because I mean it's really awesome people, different ages, different sizes, different sort of agendas, but we all are looking at improving our health and being the best that we can be.
Right on. There's so much to be said for having a supportive group of people to encourage you and root you along the way. That's cool. Very good.
Yeah, and the other thing is that I wanted to mention was, I actually have been looking for gay men weight loss support groups online, because I felt that, there's different issues that I sort of talked about earlier, where there's different issues that sort of we have as gay men losing weight than I think some of our straight counterparts might. And I was unable to sort of find a lot. So one of the things that I'm actually considering doing, and I probably will do this, is actually starting a support group myself.
Right on.
And because I just feel like, there's a lot of things where I sort of, I had questions, and I sort of was wondering if people sort of were going through the same thing. And, I had friends and stuff. I have, gay men who are friends, and I, gay men who are losing weight as friends. But, so I could talk to them a little bit. But, I felt that, I really would have liked to sort of speak to even someone who didn't know me, because I felt that would make it a little bit easier to sort of get that sort of impartial sort of opinion. So I think that that's something else that will be happening. I'm hoping to be able to do that.
Right on. Good for you, being the change in the world, right? Going out there and starting it yourself.
Absolutely.
I'm a huge proponent of that. Awesome. That's fantastic to hear that you're taking, what you've learned and some of the questions you have yourself and paying it forward and potentially starting something to help a lot of other people out there that have the same questions. Very cool, Colin. I'm really excited to hear that.
Thank you.
Right on. So as we're coming up on our time, I want to thank you again, Colin, for sharing your story and your time with us here at Tips of the Scale today. And I always like to wrap up with one of my favorite kind of fun questions here, and that's for you to share a song or a series of songs that are on your workout playlist that personally get you really fired up for your workouts.
Okay, so I'm very fickle about my music, and this is actually my favorite part of your show when you do this. So it changes from week to week, but this week I have like 5 songs, and they just show exactly how gay I am. Because the first song is Britney Spears' "Work Bitch." It's just like, it's unbelievable. Like even the lyrics, even though her voice is very, very thin, but the lyrics are really good, and the beat is just driving. There's also a singer, which a lot of people don't know her, I think, unless they sort of like look at her. They're like, oh, her. This singer named Khalees, she had a song called Brave. She had an electronica album out a few years ago, and it is, again, inspirational lyrics, a great beat. Calvin Harris featuring Example called We'll Be Coming Back, which is, I love it. Lady Gaga, Applause. And then lastly, RuPaul, How Do I Look? It's a very disco-sounding song, and it's all about sort of like talking about, how do I look? Do I look good? And things like that. And I was like, that I need like a song like that to sometimes say, okay, I'm looking good. So
some great recommendations there. I'm going to have fun looking these up and linking them up to the show notes. Awesome. Thank you for sharing those, Colin. There's some great choices there.
Thank you.
Very cool. So again, we're coming up on our time. Do you have a parting thought you'd like to share with Tips of the Scale listeners, and then share how we can get in touch with you?
Sure. Again, my parting thought to the listeners is, only you know when you're ready to start the journey, and when you're ready, start it with confidence, and do not be afraid to reach out and ask for help. And with that, I can be reached. I'm on MyFitnessPal. My username is CSG929. I have a fitness email address, which is colingaleFitness@gmail.com. That's all together. And I have a fitness Twitter handle, which is ColinGaleFit. And then I have a blog. I just started a fitness exercise blog, and it is colingalefitness.blogspot.com.
Right on. I'll make sure to link those up in our show notes so our listeners can get in touch with you and tell you how inspirational you were today, because you certainly were. Colin, again, thank you so much for carving out time from your busy day to spend with us here at Tips of the Scale today. Thank you so much. On behalf of everyone here, you have a fantastic day, sir.
You do the same, Sam. Thank you.
And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today on Tips of the Scale. Remember, you can support this podcast by going to scale.fm/audiobook and sign up for a free trial of audible.com. You can also find recaps of every show and links to all the helpful resources mentioned at tipsofthescale.com. Here's to your weight loss success.